This is going to be far more workshop-y than this morning, and I want you to be able to experience the impact of universal design on your own learning by giving you a lot of different options and choices to have discussions, to look at resources, to plan on next steps. So this website right here, you don't have to go to it at all, it's just an option. And on that website, you can get access to my keynote slides from this morning, from my slides that I'm using right now. There is a bunch of additional resources. So either actually go to that site on your devices, your phone or your iPad or your computer, or you might just want to write it down so you can go to it later, or you might want to take a picture of it so you can go to it later. But Jeff, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 minutes here, and it is case sensitive. So the capitals have to be capitals, the lowercase have to be lowercase. So let's just take a minute so you can all get on that site if you'd like to be there, and then we're gonna dive in. So get cooking. Okay.
I'm not gonna lie either. I just keep spinning.
So, let me explain to you the method to the madness of that document that you're going to go to. So this morning I gave a presentation which was like part 1 of this UDL journey, which was really understanding where UDL sits as like the goal of a multi-tiered system. And the reason I always start there is because like sometimes you start kind of, you'll learn about UDL and then people will say things like, but I don't have an inclusive class. Okay? Or, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to really plan these lessons. And that's why you have to recognize that this sits within a system that like over the course of time is going to make sure that this happens. But there are, a couple of different drops on this journey, but the document that I gave you aligns to those numbers. So if you want to know a little bit more about multi-tiered systems, you can look at any of those resources in number 1. We are about to dive into number 2. And these are really for you to personalize your journey. So I'll give you kind of a mini lesson on like the long and the short of really understanding barriers. And then I'm going to give you time to either discuss the barriers that you're facing or to choose resources so you can learn a little bit more about it. Okay, so that will allow all of you to personalize your journey. So let's dive right in. So during the keynote, I talked about that dinner party analogy, and what we want to do is we want to move away from casseroles, because casseroles are only good for people who are not picky and who don't face dietary restrictions. Okay, we can't do things one size fits all. And so I want to think about our tier 1, instead of being a casserole, being like a buffet. And then either way, we're likely going to end up in a place where we're also providing tier 2 support for those students who need that. So I want to talk about those 3 visuals and how they will help you understand the difference between UDL and differentiated instruction. So if you look on that table, on the right-hand side, it says static. Static just means like I'm going to purchase a curriculum and I'm going to teach it as it was designed. There is no curriculum that is going to meet the needs of kids who are significantly above grade level, while also meeting the needs of kids who are significantly below grade level, while also meeting the needs of English language learners and kids who experience trauma, without a teacher's careful eye towards design. Now that doesn't mean that I'm anti-curriculum. I think a curriculum is an amazing tool and I'm always glad to have one as a teacher. But like, I don't work for Pearson. Okay, Pearson works for me. And when we talk about curriculum, we have to make sure that if we have a casserole, that we are just putting that out as one option on a buffet. Okay? So a curriculum, a static curriculum, is basically the concept that if I follow this script, then all kids will learn. And we know that most of those lessons are designed for kids who we are mythically average. Because we need to buy a different curriculum for kids who have significant cognitive impairments, and a different curriculum for kids who are gifted. And that is all the evidence you need that the curriculum is not universally designed. Okay? So what we want to do instead is we want to move to the other side. I want to be so proactive about recognizing that when I value variability, I know that every kid has strengths and every kid has weaknesses. And without knowing your kids, all of us can predict what those weaknesses are. Some kids don't have a really great handle on the English language. Some kids really struggle with trauma. Other kids struggle with stress and anxiety. There are some kids who are going to be really hyped up and have ADHD. There's going to be some kids who are not reading at grade level, who don't know their math fact. We know that if we value inclusion. And so what we have to do is we have to plan for that. Okay, we literally have to plan for the fact that there are going to be some students who are going to face barriers. And when we do that, when we plan for those barriers, we actually remove those barriers. Because if I know that a student cannot decode text, okay, let's say that you're a 4th grade teacher, you know that your student knows their letters and their numbers, but they don't yet have a handle on phonics. They're not decoding yet, okay? If I know that, I don't have a magical ointment that allows that child to be a reader today. Okay, the kid is going to need some phonics and reading intervention. Okay, and the student should have that in addition to it, absolutely. But in my class, if I don't allow audio, I am choosing to exclude that child. Because the reality is today, the kid's not decoding yet. So when I say, okay, we're all going to read this section of Charlotte's Web, you can either read it silently, you can read it with a partner in like a whisper phone, or you can come over here with me and I'll read it out loud. I have now eliminated the decoding barrier because I've provided another option, okay? So even when I do that really well, there will be times when I have to differentiate instruction. And that means I'm going to fill cavities. That's why I wanted to start with that dental analogy, right? When I have evidence that shows that students need more, I have to give the students more, okay? So I'm still going to go into this differentiated instruction. So differentiated instruction by definition is a responsive type of teaching where you're giving students specifically what they need based on data. Great. That just can't be the only thing they're getting, okay? Because a kid who is in 4th grade who is only getting phonics will not pass a 4th grade test. Okay, because they've just never given the opportunity to access that level of thinking and like make connections and learn all the comprehension things like predicting and summarizing and monitor your thinking, right? And so we need students to get more and not instead of. So if you're starting with tier 1 casserole-like, you're going to be buried in trying to make meals for every kid. And when you start with the buffet, there's going to be so fewer kids who really need that differentiated instruction. Okay, and then that is truly what the multi-tiered system is all about. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just kind of come back from lunch, to think about MTSS, and to answer this question: where are you in the figurative kitchen when you are planning your curriculum? Okay, so get chatting. Okay, so this is the lesson, this is one of the lessons from today, which is UDL and DI. It's not like an either or, like they're not in competition with each other, okay? You design your class to universally design it, and it's like your attempt to eliminate all the possible barriers that you can. And then you're also being really responsive to data, so that when students need some supplemental support, some tier 2 support, some filling some cavities, you're doing that in addition to it. But it's really important that we always start with the universal design, so kids learn how to be learners. So kids know, like, I see you for who you are, I have designed for you, and I want to honor you enough to let you make choices. And so we don't want to start with differentiated instruction. And when we start with differentiated instruction, the way that you know that you have a curriculum that is aligned much more to differentiated instruction than UDL is if you have a program that says, do this for your English learners, do this for your struggling students, do this for kids who are pre-AP. Okay, that's differentiated instruction because you're eliminating access to kids who are who you perceive to be gifted or ahead to scaffolds. And you're limiting access to really high quality, like deep conceptual thought for kids who are struggling. And so it's taking all of those things that you already have and just making them available for everybody. So this is Jerry Brooks, he's a principal in Lexington, Kentucky, and he's ridiculous and hilarious. And he's throwing a differentiation party, and this is where it gets tricky. Differentiation is a word that is used in UDL and in differentiated instruction. Okay? The real difference is who is doing the differentiating. Okay? When the teacher is doing the differentiating, that is differentiated instruction. When the student is self-differentiating, that is because the teacher universally designed. Okay? So he's throwing a pretty nice little differentiation party. And when he starts off, he's really talking about UDL. You know, he's basically saying, like, you know, one of the goals of a party is to make sure everyone has something to drink that they want. Now, if you had a party, you would never in a million years, when people came, just say, like, here's your root beer. Like, you're gonna say, do you want a soda? Do you want a beer? Do you need a glass of water? You have options, right? And so he starts off by saying, like, I have these different drinks, I have these different cups. That is UDL. You actually get to think, what do I need to have a good time? And you get to pick it. Fantastic, right? But he slips. In his design, he slips into differentiated instruction. And that's what we do not want to do, okay? He's planning based on labeling. So I'm not going to say I'm planning for my struggling learners. I'm going to say my lesson has to make sure that if a kid can't decode, they can still access the lesson. Okay? I'm not saying I'm doing it because like Jose needs it. Okay? So you're going to watch this video. It's 2.5 minutes. I want you then as a table to say, where does he slip? Where does he label his guests and make decisions and they don't even get an opportunity to choose? Okay?
I've just come from my favorite store, the Dollar Tree. I have some suggestions for the party if you would like to have some educators over to your house this summer. They got some great ideas. They got these pineapple cups, these coconut cups. You could have a Hawaiian themed party, but I have an even better suggestion that's going to blow your mind. You can get these great cups at the Dollar Tree, and I know what you're thinking, that's just a red Solo cup. Let me show you something. Boom. A different size. Wait, one more time. Boom. Differentiation party. You can meet the needs of all your party goers. Some people just need a regular size drink. Some people don't need that much to drink. Some people need a big old drink. You can meet the needs of all your party goers with these great red Solo cup from Dollar Tree. Think about all the possibilities at your differentiation party. You can differentiate the food. You can have some wings, some barbecue wings, a little bit spicy. For those that don't like spicy, you could have some honey barbecue wings. For those that need some extra spice, you could have some of them 5-alarm Tabasco wings. You could differentiate the heat in your wings. You could have some meatballs, and you could meet the needs of those that don't eat red meat by having turkey balls. You can meet your party goers' needs by having some tofu balls for those that are vegetarians. You can even differentiate your dip. You can make one of them 7-layer dips with the refried beans and the salsa and the onions and cheeses. You can differentiate and make a 6-layer dip. Maybe leave out onions. Then you can make an 8-layer dip. Maybe add some extra festive cheese. You can even differentiate the time of your party. You can have your party from 7 to 9, invite all the fun people from 7 to 9, but you could actually invite the wild, crazy people from 6 to 9 because they can handle some extra time. Then you could just invite the fun people a little bit boring that can't handle a big old long party. You could do them from 8 to 9. You can even differentiate the time of your party. I'm telling you, there's a lot of things you can do with your differentiation party. Starting out with these great cups from the Dollar Trees. Go out and get you some. You're going to get to talk to all the teachers at your differentiation party.
Okay, so here are your prompts. You are going to identify when he transitions from universal design to differentiated instruction design. And then I want you to just choose one of the bullet points below, which is like, why did you make that decision? How would the guest feel when you made that decision? And how could he have universally designed the part where he really was more aligned to differentiated instruction, okay? So 1 minute to check in with each other. Where does he slip? Chat. Okay. So, and does anyone want to take a gander? When does he slip into differentiated instruction? The time of the part. Okay, and it's so subtle. He has already decided you can't be there for more than an hour. And the reality is there could be some pretty significant evidence that suggests that that might be true, okay? But do we honor every single guest enough to always give them the chance to just think about it and try? Okay? Now, how could we have universally designed that invitation? Come when you want, it's an open house. Now I might need minimum standards. Like I might say all of you need to come for an hour. My party is from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And I really want you to think about what's best for you to have a good time at the party. Okay? And so think about like when you actually want to come, but then think about what's the best thing for you. Because it's not just what you want, it's also what you need. So I might say, I would like to go to it, for an hour, and I would like to come for that last hour because I know it gets crazy and there's karaoke and it's nuts. But then, like the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, I just don't like when people bump into me, and like the dark kind of scares me. I probably should come for that first hour, okay? But then what you do is, we say it in UDL all the time, we say like that context matters. So like the reality is the kid who could very easily make 3 hours at a party might have basketball practice and have to work and be getting over a cold. So when you put out the options, there's this big concern of like, but they're gonna choose the easy one. And like, this is what I want you to ask yourself, okay? This is like, I've been like really struggling with this lately. Is these sweet little lovies are expected to put in full, absolutely like undeniable effort on every single thing we ask them to do. We don't do that as adults, okay? Because that would mean you make a healthy, amazing breakfast every morning. That your physical fitness is so important that you make sure that you do something healthy for yourself. That you also make sure that your bills are always paid on time, your house is always decorated for the holidays, that you always send thank you cards, you always plan your lessons, you always connect with your parents. There's a lot of crap we call in. And it's because we need balance. And like, imagine if every single thing in your life, someone's like, you're capable of more, you're capable of more, you're capable of more. This is why so many kids experience significant anxiety and stress, okay? I need to know that you know how to work hard, but I also honor your choice right now. And when we kids about their choices, kids will say, hey, you can write, you can read, you can, you can read this yourself, you can come over here with me, you can listen to it. A kid gets audio, who's a very strong reader. I say, what's going on? And just talk to me about your choice. And the kid says, yesterday I got hit in the head at soccer. Kind of have a headache, so I don't want to read, I want to listen. It's not an easy choice. It's a better choice, right? And so in giving kids choices, we're honoring them. We're honoring their identity. And again, sometimes they might give us answers that we don't love, but I'm gonna let you try, okay? If it's truly a strategy that you think will allow you to meet or exceed the goal. So I would say to students, like, okay, come for an hour, like talk to me about it. But here's the thing, if a bunch of people came to the party and then we're starting crap, I'm gonna pull them. That's the differentiated instruction part. I'm gonna say, you 5 right now are a little bit out of control. Why don't we like go for a quick walk around the block and come up with some strategies, because I want you to stay and I love it. And I'm gonna give you a couple of options, but this right here ain't gonna happen anymore. And I'm gonna fill a cavity with them. So they need some supplemental behavioral reminders in addition to what everybody else is getting, right? And that's the magic of UDL. So it's subtle, but it's incredibly powerful. So when you think about like, I'm just gonna show you, I was a 7th grade English teacher. Now I know some of you teach like, pre-K or kindergarten, and I'll tell you how to do the same thing. The assessment on the left assumes a lot about kids. Okay, it's reading an excerpt from Lord of the Flies, which we probably all read because they never change books. And it's like, fake characters go on an island and then they like gang up and kill this kid on the island. And so the question, which is actually really interesting, is evil in violence, is it inherent? Is it truly like in your nature? Or is it nurture? Or is it a little bit of both, right? So I would want all of my kids to read, this is very, smarter balance like, read this text, and then I want you to explain whether or not you agree or disagree that, what do you think it's a nature or nurture or a little bit of both, and then why? Now when you're looking at citing evidence, cite textual evidence, okay? If you think about your anchor standards for the Common Core, is that a reading standard or is that a writing standard? It's a reading standard. Kids don't need to write the answer to this. Okay, so the first step of UDL is what truly is your standard. Okay, I need to teach kids how to cite textual evidence before I can ask them to write and use evidence in their writing. So for me, automatically I would say this is really a reading standard. And I will know that they were able to read if they're able to give me an opinion, and then the reason why they feel that way, and at least, let's call it, 2 pieces of evidence to support it. So I feel like it's nature. I feel like this because of here, and in the story it says this, okay? So that is laden with casseroles. You have to decode. You have to be interested in it, okay? Like you'd be like, this is stupid, it's about kids on an island, right? You have to know how to, organize your writing. You have to know what the words say. There's just so many layers of it. And so I would say, gosh, what do I really want? I want kids to actually be able to support their opinion with something they can point to in a text. That's what I want them to do. Okay, I want them to be able to point to it. Okay, you can do this with a picture book in kindergarten. Okay, what picture do you like? Why? I like that drawing that author did. Why? Because the character has red shoes and it reminds me of my grandmother's red shoes. That's citing textual evidence, right? So that's really the goal. So I'm going to say, let's think about this in a little bit more detail, okay? I still want them to have access to that text. Every kid should have access to grade level text. Whether you have to read it out loud, whether they have to read it with a partner, whether they have to look at the pictures, all kids access to grade level text. And so I'm going to say, I still like that text, right? So I want you to either read the text or listen to the text. Now, how on earth would I get a text on audio? Is I would take my phone and I would read it out loud and I would record my voice. I did it all the time. And then I would say, after that, I want you to choose one of these other 3 resources about people around us who do violent things. Okay, so there's this really cool article on Newsella, which is a place where you can look up a newspaper article, and it can go in 5 different reading levels in a couple different languages. So I might find an article that talks about like, is violence nature or nurture? Okay, I might also find something local, like maybe a bunch of kids, went into a old factory and broke a bunch of windows and hurt an animal or something. Like something school appropriate, but just saying like violence is around us. Maybe I show a short video clip of like what's happening internationally, like casualties in wars and things like that. And what I would say is, okay, after reviewing these resources, I want you to explain your views on violent behavior. And you can do that in writing, or you could do it in like a podcast where you could tell me, or you could do it in another product, like if you want to make a poster or something like that and tell me this is what I believe, reason 1, evidence, reason 2, I don't care. I just need to know that you can cite evidence at this point. And as you work, know that you can use a graphic organizer. So if you want to write, use a graphic organizer. If you want to write but you're struggling with actual written text or spelling, again, use Google Read and Write. Use some of this as your tech. This is the rubric that I'm going to grade everything on. So people are always like, do you need a rubric for the poster and a rubric for this? No, this is my rubric. Okay? I have a link under number 4. It's called the single point rubric. It's the greatest thing of all time. I say, this is what I want from you. I need a firm opinion. I need at least 2 reasons for that opinion, and I need a piece of evidence under each opinion. If you do that for me, you get full credit. I don't care if it's in a poster, or if you walk up and tell me, or like, it doesn't matter, because that's the standard, right? Once they know that, then I might say, now let's work on our writing. Okay, you all have this amazing opinion. Now let's work on writing those opinions. And then my buffet is going to be like, here's an exemplar of something I wrote. Now, when you do this, you might want to choose a different prompt. So like, this is my opinion on if people are nice or not nice, you know what I mean? And then also, if you want to work with me in a small group, I'm over here, or here's a graphic organizer for you. And this is, so again, it really depends on the standards. The same thing is with math, is we give kids math problems all the time. I don't want kids to not have access to this math problem. It's just so sadly, I will tell you, I can't solve that. I have literally no idea how to solve that. Like, it's talking about function B and function L, but like, is that like an actual function, or is that just like what we're calling a function, like A and B? Okay? And so you look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so incredibly inaccessible. And so if you're giving that out, there's a lot of kids who would not be successful in that class. It's just too restrictive of a math problem. And so by giving the option of like, let me first plug these numbers into something on Desmos so you can see what happens. Visually, what do these numbers mean? Give them a context. Like, if you were actually saving up to go to a baseball game, if you think of X as like, this type of account and Y is this type of account. Give a math reference sheet. What is function B? What is function L? Give an example of how to solve that equation. One exemplar of a constructed response, I could do this problem. Almost all of us probably could, if we had all of those things. And then it says, explain why your answers are correct. Every single teacher will be expecting a kid to use math vocab, but it's like a big secret in our heads, because some kids don't have math vocab yet. And so when a kid says, I put this and this and got this, they don't get the same score as the kid that said the rate of change of the slope was, the initial amount was. Okay, tell them what the words are you want them to use, right? And so many times, our textbooks will say, provide a word bank for kids who are struggling. Or allow students, right? Just put it out on the buffet and say, all right, lovelies, I just did a mini lesson on how to do this problem. If you're ready to start doing them, go over and start doing them. You can go online and do them on Edulastic, or you can do them on like your actual worksheet. Okay? If you're struggling, feel free to use a math reference sheet, to come over here with me so I can give you an example of how, like, that's what UDL is. It's not saying like, let's throw away the math curriculum. It's what do we have to add on the buffet so the math curriculum is accessible to more kids. So what we know is it's the curriculum that actually includes the barriers. So I'm going to show you a couple of tools that are going to rock your world. So, under the number 2, the first 3 tools, this website is so awesome. And it's essentially, it gives you what all your options are. So I say, one of the barriers when I want kids to write is they don't know how to organize their writing. So I want to provide them with graphic organizers. So I go and I look, and this is like the research behind the graphic organizers. It tells me, what kind of games you get, shows me how to make them, and then it lists. These are the big types of graphic organizers, right? So a lot of us spend so much time in differentiated instruction land being like, okay, we're gonna write this poem in 2nd grade, let me make a graphic organizer for that, let me make a graphic organizer for that. There's really only like 3 types of graphic organizers. You got a Venn diagram, you got the hamburger thing, where you're saying like, here's your topic, here's your reasons, here's the bottom, maybe you have like a sequence, that's it. Okay, choose the 3 that are actually important, teach them how to use them the first couple weeks of school when you're still doing routine building, laminate them in hard copy, and then just say every time you write for the rest of the year, hey, remember that hamburger? If you need it to organize your writing, go get it. Because right now we're like, whose IP is this graphic organizer? Oh gosh, these 6, okay. I gotta make 6 copies, I gotta make, right? Everyone benefits from a graphic organizer. And here's the thing, is how many of you, if you were to write a paper right now, would use a graphic organizer? Raise your hand. Not everybody. Okay? So it's not forcing everyone to have a graphic organizer. It's requiring everyone to use a graphic organizer so they know how to use a graphic organizer. And then if it is helpful, they choose to use it. And if it is not, they don't. And that is giving up so much control. Because usually it's like, I'm gonna give it to these 6 kids, or then we say there's a stigma to that, so I'm gonna make everyone do it. UDL is saying, teach them the value of using it, and if it's valuable, and they care about getting the organization right, they will use it every time. Okay? So this site is awesome to just literally putz around on. The other one is Goalbook, which is a list of like hundreds of UDL strategies. So it's like, how do you get kids to, care more about what they're doing? And there's all of these different things, like you can do one a day and like rock your world over the course of the year. So just know that those are there. And if you're wondering what barriers students are facing, this 3rd tool has barrier symptoms. Zach Smith made this, and there's an awesome video. But like, when a kid says, when am I ever gonna use this? Or when kids are unwilling to take risks. So you give some options and they're kind of choosing a safer thing. That means there are barriers that are preventing them from being really motivated. Okay? And then underneath it, it tells you how UDL can help you eliminate those barriers. So know that those are your tools. I am going to give you some time to either explore anything you want on the website, or just have a conversation. Like, continue thinking about design, continue thinking about barriers. This is your time to do with it what you wish. So I'm going to play this song, and when it's done, we'll come back together. I'm gonna snake around, so stop me if you have a question, but your time is yours. All right, everybody. So, I never ever like to start with this because it makes it feel like UDL is like a program you buy, and that is not what UDL is at all. Okay? It's not like an initiative, it's not a program, it's not something you do. Like, you're already designing lessons. Universal design is a framework used to design learning experiences. Okay? So like right now, CAST, and like CAST is like the mothership, it's like a think tank outside of Harvard University. They created, they did all the brain-based learning, but actually hooking kids up to fMRIs to see like who is actually activated in what part of the brain. They did all that research, and they do not endorse any curriculum as being universally designed. And I think we all know in our heart that there's no curriculum that meets the needs of all kids if you don't have a brilliant pedagogical eye for how to add other options. That's what teaching is, right? So I always say, if you want to build a house, ideally you would get a great builder and some great tools, okay? You could give a crappy builder really great tools, you're not getting a house. Curriculum on its own will do nothing, okay? It's giving great tools to a crappy builder. Okay, now a great builder can actually do a pretty decent job with crappy tools. Okay, and that shows us that the pedagogy, the instruction, needs to navigate the curriculum. Now, you give a great builder great tools, you make magic, right? And that's why we adopt curriculum. It's to give you a tool to meet the needs of all students, not to tell you exactly how to do your job, right? Because there is that pedagogical stance to say, hey, I love this as a foundation, but this is going to be a barrier for this kid. So I'm going to provide the option of doing this. I'm going to have the option of working together. I'm going to have the option of the break, okay? And a curriculum won't tell you to do those things, okay? A curriculum is an amazing tool to deliver content, but it's not going to meet the needs of all kids without a careful eye. So that's why we have to be designers, instructional designers. And so this is the long and short of what we know about the learning brain, and like the easy analogy I can think of. So there are 3 parts of the brain that must be activated for learning to occur. Okay, they're called the affective, the recognition, and the strategic network, and those sit in our little heads. One of my kindergarten teachers in Groton actually created little brain puppets on popsicle sticks and had the kids color in the networks. And so she's like, okay everyone, I'm telling you the goal so you know why you're doing it. What are we lighting up? And they're like, the affective network. So it's really talking to kids about the fact that there are 3 parts of your brain that work together. And I'm going to tell you how a heating system works, and then the brain works the same way. If my house is cold in New England, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a very specific goal on the thermostat. I'm going to say I want it to be 72. Okay? Now, I program this to be 72, and then if I'm lucky, the thermostat will turn on, and it will communicate with the burner. Now, the burner has to comprehend the message from the thermostat. It has to receive the message. Okay? It has to understand the message, and if it does, it starts cooking, it turns on, it starts making heat. But we don't know if the heat works unless the burner then communicates with the blower. The blower is the fan that pushes it out. And if that is done well, I can literally sit on the other end with a thermometer on my phone and say it's 72. Okay, the thermostat is set for 72 and the room is 72. Now, if you set the thermostat at 72 and the room is 60, you know something's broken, but you're not quite sure what is broken. It might be the thermostat, it might be the burner, I don't know, so now I'm gonna hire a plumber or an HVAC person. So the brain works exactly like that. If you want any learning out of kids, the first thing that you have to do is turn on the affective network of the brain, which tells them, this is what you're doing and why. This is the thing you have to know, and this is the thing you have to be able to do. So you have to make the goal really, really clear. The reason that we're reading today is so all of you know that characters are, the way that we get to know characters are by their actions, the things that they do, what their dialogue, the things that they say, the things that they think, okay? And if we bring all that together, we get to know a character. We can say a character is nice. Why? What's your evidence? The character did these 2 things. The character said that to his mother. Another character said about him, he's the nicest boy, right? So that's the point. Okay, if I make that point and I do a mini lesson with the book, then I say, now you can choose whatever book you want to read. It can be audio, it can be a graphic novel, it can be a picture book, but in that book you have to be able to describe your character using evidence, and the evidence has to be the actions, the thoughts, and the feelings. Make it so clear. Because kids are going to make much better choices when they know what it is they have to do. So I'm setting the thermostat. Once I set the thermostat, I then have to teach something. Okay, so the recognition network is like, what do kids have to know to be able to do that? Okay, what is an action? What is a thought? What is a feeling? And for little kids, the difference between a thought and a feeling is hugely different. Okay, so good luck with that one. But I taught 7th grade, it was a little easier to talk about those things, right? But the reality is we do have to spend some time and teach. Is this a thought or is this a feeling, right? What are the feelings? What's the feeling vocabulary? Now, I don't know if they learned a thing if they don't express something to me. And that's what we consider to be assessment. They have to tell us something. They have to create a picture. They have to, to do some writing or a project, right? So it's essentially, I set the goal, I teach something, and then I figure out, did I teach it well enough for all of them to learn? And when they come out with an assessment on the end that I'm like, oh my word, these kids do not know how to start characterization. I don't know where the breakdown was. They just like in heat. So the UDL guidelines, they're just telling us the breakdown is in one of these 9 places. Or, with some really tough kids, it's in all 9 places, okay? Because when you don't learn, okay, when kids have no purpose and no motivation, okay, it's either because they're simply not interested in what they're doing, okay? You've shared the goal and they don't feel like it's relevant at all. Or, you've made the goal really clear, that's that first checkpoint, but they don't know how to work towards it. Like, I love the idea of getting to know a character, but like, the book that I chose is way out of my readability level. So I don't really know what to do with it. And because I don't work with anybody else and I'm not getting feedback from the teacher, I'm kind of stuck with this book I can't read. Or the other issue is I just lack the regulation strategies to deal with the task at all. Because of trauma, because I'm hungry, there's like a million reasons. So anyway, think of these as the UDL principles, or we have to provide multiple means of engagement. Okay, and that just means we have to think about a couple of different ways to kind of wake up that brain. Okay, we have to provide a couple different ways of how we teach, we have to provide a couple different ways for how we assess. And if we do that really well, and we put that buffet out for kiddos, okay, they become more purposeful and motivated. Now, UDL is not a magic wand. Okay, it's not like suddenly every kid is going to be like this amazing, amazing learner. It's just way more kids will be way more successful when we honor their individual pathways. And so I want my kids to be purposeful and motivated, and to do that, I have to actually let them design their own path. And I want them to be resourceful as well as knowledgeable, and we don't do a great job, I'm like totally throwing myself under the bus, of allowing kids to be resourceful because we give them all the resources they need. Like, we hand out the graphic organizer, we hand out the highlight, and it's like, it's over there. If you know it's helpful, go and get it. That requires you to be resourceful. And then ultimately, I want them to be goal-directed, but you can't be goal-directed when you're only asked to be compliant. You're not goal-directed when someone gives you your goal and the strategy. You're compliant, you're following directions. You wanna know who else is great at following directions? Robots. Okay, so telling kids this is exactly what you do and having them follow that direction is becoming kind of an archaic skill. Okay, it's all about here's your goal, how are you gonna reach it? Okay, because if there's only one way to do it, I can program something for that. So the UDL guidelines really are asking us to think about every single day, like, this thing that I'm teaching, why is this important? Now, I'll tell you why characterization is important, okay, is because it allows you to build perspective and humanity and empathy, and recognizing that you can tell a lot about people if you pay attention to what they say and what they do and what other people say about them. That's how we get to know people, okay? And we have to very carefully pay attention to that all the time. I can't just say I don't like that person without seeing what are their actions and what are their stories. So we talk about you have to get to know your friends and your family. And then how am I going to give my kids options to learn about characterization? And then ultimately, how am I going to allow them to tell me that they know about characterization? Because there could be some kids who could describe their character amazingly, some Pokemon monster or something, and they're super, super excited about it because they know that this is like a really sneaky character, and they have all these reasons why, but the kid can't write. And if that's the only way to express it, because again, characterization is a reading standard, not a writing standard. Like you end up playing double jeopardy with kids who are really excited about that they did in fact meet the content. So moving forward, just know, I know that George Couros came a couple years ago. Him and I just wrote a book together. We're besties. We're like, long lost separated siblings. He talks about the innovator's mindset. And the reason we wrote a book together is because there's so much interwovenness of what we call in UDL expert learning. I want kids to actually learn how to learn. We design options so they can learn. The goal is ultimately that they can choose those options to learn. And if we do that well, they also start to develop this innovator's mindset. Okay, they start thinking about, hey, that's a problem. But you know what? I've kind of looked around and I've noticed that there's a bunch of different ways to solve that, and I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to try it. And I'm getting stuck, but no big deal. I'm going to connect with other people because I know collaboration is really big. And so I'm going to connect with other people and I'm going to try to create a solution. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to stop and reflect and then try something else. Okay, we want that to happen in our classrooms all of the time. And so when we talk about what teaching is really about, ultimately at the core this is about, do we believe that every kid can learn? And if we do, we create a space where kids have really strong relationships with adults who believe that they can learn at very high levels, regardless of where their starting point is. Okay? And we build those relationships with kids through being really learner-driven and evidence-informed. Okay, we are driven to design lessons for all learners, and when we have evidence that they need more, we provide that. And also, we make sure that we're empowering learners. I don't want my kids to be compliant, I want them empowered. Okay? Aylin and Brecken are in the same classroom. They would never in a million years write about the same thing. So if they needed to express, recently they were writing persuasive letters. They had to do research and find someone online they could actually send the letter to. And the innovation teacher was working closely with the classroom teacher. Basically they learned the 3 rhetorical strategies of pathos, logos, and ethos. So logos is convincing someone with facts. Pathos is manipulating people's emotions. And ethos is using someone else's credibility if you don't have your own. So, very simple, Brecken is trying to get me to buy him a Nintendo Switch. So, his logos is, Mom, I make this much for allowance, and Grandpa Bobby always gives me $200 for Christmas. And I looked on Amazon, and it's this much, and so I have enough to cover it. Like, he's going straight for the facts. And then he starts going for the heart, which is like, everyone else has it. I will never get to play with my friends if I can't buy this. Everyone is talking about it. I feel really left out. And then he goes with the ethos, which is like Mrs. Dish said that Minecraft is actually good for learning. And I'm like, that little pain in the neck, right? Because he nailed it. Aylin is going to write to the legislators because she's ending puppy mills. Yay. Yeah. And she did, in fact, tell me. She's like, Mom, and I'm like, what? She goes, would I get in trouble if I broke into the puppy mills and let all the puppies go? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not totally opposed. So let's work out the kinks a little bit. But again, her facts are research about how many puppies and mama puppies die. Pathos, can you imagine your pet bleeding out of the nipples? Ethos, these veterinarians say this, right? But what we do is that we value that they have options and choices to do their thing. And that's empowering when you get a voice. Okay, that's very different from now we're all gonna write to the principal about how we want to do school lunch. I'm like, I don't care, I packed my lunch. Okay, so, and then when we do that, you see on the outside, our kids become really wildly innovative in their thinking. Now, I'm not saying they're the best student. I'm not saying necessarily, this is not about grades, this is about learning. And kids who are learners ultimately will perform better. But I did not become a teacher so I could see scores go up on 2 days of testing. I became a teacher because I have 180 days to change a kid's life. And if I do that right, the numbers will go up. But I'm not doing it for the numbers. And how do I create this whole environment is through those UDL principles. So I want you to think about UDL as not only, because I know a lot of your kids are successful. So you don't want to just think about UDL as access and engagement. It's the kids who are successful are not empowered. They're not critically thinking. They're just going to follow directions. Okay, and that's not setting them up for huge success when they go off and they have to create their own world. So what I want to do now, and I'm going to skip ahead of this for a sec, is just give you a minute to talk about this concept of how can we create UDL, not only to make sure that our classrooms are more inclusive, which they will be. When we let kids choose the information they're going to research from, you know, Aylin probably watched a lot of videos on her Chromebook. Okay, because she, you know, when she texts me, it's almost impressive. I can't even phonetically figure out some words. Like I'm like, wow, that's a good one. I don't even know that one. She's like, Mom. But she's watching videos and she's researching and then she's using Siri and you know, she's creating very high quality work that if you said she had to read articles and write, would not be able to produce. Okay, but she is so much better off as a thinker because she has access to that experience. Okay, so take a minute just to answer that question, and then we're going to dive a little bit more into that concept of engagement and empowerment and how you build it in your littlest learners. Ready, go. Just a minute to connect.
Let's do it.
But just like,
So you're going to love this, especially as elementary teachers.
oh yeah, it took a while for me.
Because I am not telling you anything you don't know. Dr. James Stigler is out of UCLA, and all of his work is on perseverance. What does it take for perseverance? And his specialty is cultural norms for perseverance. And so he does similar research studies. And he'll go to Canada, and he'll go to Chile, and he'll go to Japan, and he'll go to Finland, and he comes to the US. And he tries to say, like, is perseverance something that's like we can say about the millennials, for example, or is it truly by country, by culture? And spoiler alert, it's by culture. And so he goes to all these different countries, and he has first graders. He gets to with large groups of first graders, thousands of first graders, and he gives them a math problem that cannot be solved. Okay, the answer is it's in a balanced equation. Just to see how fast will they quit. And America has the record for being the fastest quitters. And the difference, if you read the whole study, is on average, which probably means half of them quit before, American children will give up on something in 30 seconds. In Japan, which was the largest contrast in the study, they stopped the study at an hour. And it wasn't like, if you read the study, like it wasn't like the kids were upset, they were literally like, what, this is a real pisser, like we gotta be able to solve this thing. And he's saying like, this concept of like quitting is there's a cultural norm that struggle is bad. That struggle is something that we should end for kids by helping them. Okay? And that's not necessarily true everywhere else. Okay? That like in some cultures, allowing kids to struggle is like a gift of like, you're learning how to deal with this. So when we don't appreciate struggle, what ends up happening is when kids are struggling, we kind of like rush in to help them. You know, so it's like, oh, I'll write the first paragraph for you and then you keep going. Or like, here, you can do this, right? And instead of saying like, all of you are going to try this for 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. And you're actually gonna work on it for 5 minutes. Now I know that's hard. So let's talk about a couple of strategies that you can use when you get frustrated. You know, here's some think putty, let's talk about deep breath, I'm gonna do like mindfulness beforehand, but like, you can look at the timer, we're gonna do this for 5 minutes, and you have to try. And I don't care in 5 minutes if you come up with nothing, if you tried something, right? But we don't do that a lot, and so we end up with a lot of kids who, this commercial says they're stuck on an escalator. So these two people, they have a goal, they want to get to work or make or whatever, and then they face a problem, they're stuck. Our kids get stuck all the time. Now, they need a teacher to rescue them.
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello! There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do
Like these are the kids that you see there sitting there with no shoes on. What are you doing? I can't put them on. Did you try? I just can't. You're like, oh my word.
Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second. All right. All right. That's more like it.
Feels like sometimes to be working with some kiddos who are not self-directed yet. Okay, so my son Torin, oh bless his heart, he's the sweetest love in the whole world and likes to put approximately this much effort into anything he's doing that's not athletic. And so he came home the other day, he's like, oh my gosh, my teacher's gonna kill me, he's in 5th grade. And I'm like, do tell. And he's like, oh, I forgot my homework. And I'm like, okay, what's the homework? It was like this list of words, and we were supposed to have them at dinner and try to talk about them or look them up. There were a bunch of things we can do, I don't have the words. Okay, what can you think of would be one way you can maybe get the words? Mom, I told you I forgot it in my locker. No, I hear ya. Let's just go down this road a little bit. Is there any possible way you could somehow find out what those 5 words are? Mom, you're not listening. I'm like, do you have a phone? Yes, Mom. Okay, let's try again. Given that you have a phone, is there any way that, I swear to you, he's like, what are they gonna send the worksheet through the phone? And I'm like, oh my gosh! Just think for a second here. Our next door neighbor is in your class. All of your friends are in here. You can take a picture of it, send it on the phone. He's like, oh. Yeah, right? And so now he has a strategy. So the next time he forgets it, he's like, don't worry, Mom, I have a phone. And I'm like, oh my goodness, right? So my little guy, Bowden, he is a great picture of a kid who has perseverance that I will probably take away from him. Because watch him, we went to touch a truck and he put on these cute little gloves from an ambulance, right? And so this was just because I've been thinking about perseverance. I had just read Stigler's study. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see how long he'll struggle with this. And I guarantee you I would not have allowed him to struggle this long if it wasn't experimental. Okay? So I wanted you to watch it. And this is should be an aha moment of maybe why our kids aren't great at perseverance. Because when they're persevering and they're struggling and they're getting uncomfortable, we tend to struggle with that. So I'm just going to show you this, and I want you to have an honest conversation about it. How would you have helped? Would you have given us a tip verbally, or would you have let it ride, right? So again, here we go. Blow up the hand into a balloon. I feel this one. Did you get it? Okay, that's 30 seconds of struggle, but honestly, it's painful to not squat down and just take the glove. There's just something that's we don't want kids to struggle, and they have to learn how to be good at it. Okay, so just check in with each other real quick, just about that thought of either your reaction to that video or just kind of in your classroom. How can you shift the narrative around struggling kids?
What do I do? I don't know. You got help.
So let's talk about the progression of skills, and then you can have some time to check in with each other. So, in moving towards universal design, it's going to be a process, but becoming an expert learner for kids is also a process. So you can't just go in tomorrow and be like, well, you're not coming in tomorrow, but you can't just go in next week and be like, okay, here's the standards, go meet it, right? Because the kids are not expert learners yet. And that's okay. And so one of the things that I designed was the UDL progression rubric. And this is really because, like, when you think about being a practitioner who's really strong in instructional design, that's a journey like anything else. So I'm a runner, I've run my whole life. Me and Tora still get up every morning and run. So that was like my greatest joy in life when my fourth graders like, can I come running with you? I was like, I would pay you. But yeah, I love it. I love having a running partner, he's a good kid. So anyway, when my husband and I run we do marathons, we'll do like the Spartan adventure races and things, and we ran the Spartan Beast in Killington, Vermont, it turned out to be about 18 miles with obstacles and things. And when we were done, the kids were like, we want to do a Spartan race. So I'm like, that's cool, you should totally do that. So the next morning they had a kids Spartan race, it was like a half mile. And they were like, we're Spartans too. And I equate that to when people say, oh, UDL, I'm already doing it. Okay? A lot of people are starting to use these strategies. It's not something you do. Okay? It's like you have to continually design. Like I could literally design something amazing today with options and choices, but like if I don't tomorrow, like what does that mean for kids? And so it's not something that you can just say, I already do it. Okay? Because as soon as I stop running, I'm not a runner anymore. Okay? And as soon as I stop consistently trying to provide more options and choices for my kids, I am not universally designing it. But the thing is that's a beautiful, beautiful place to start. Like I'm starting to become a runner and I'm starting to think about design differently. And that's like, amen, that's amazing. But like my kids who are starting to run are no cross-country runners who are far more independent about it, but are still really hungry for improvement. You know, how do I get faster? How do I have better refueling strategies? And girl cross-country runners and male cross-country runners are no Boston Marathon winners. 2 people a year win the Boston Marathon, that's it. They are the most elite of the elite, okay? But they are honestly the hardest worker of the spectrum. And so like there's this really interesting thing that happens sometimes in professions where it's like, I already know how to do this. Like I don't need to change, I don't need to learn anything new, I don't need to design differently. But like the most brilliant designers will always design differently. Okay? And so it's not like I already have this assignment, it really works. There's new technology invented all the time. That, you know, kids are really different with, you know, they bring very different levels of stress and trauma than previously we had seen in kids. And so it requires a shift no matter what. Okay? And so you're always designing for that shift. And so I just want to keep that in mind because again, it's really easy to be like, I know this, but this is not about something I know. We know we need to design for all kids, but we also know which kids are successful in school, which means you're really designing more for them. Okay? And again, I don't consider myself in any way, shape, or form done learning about how to design things for kids. And the cool thing about UDL is it's like never going away, because again, it's not something you're gonna purchase or anything. There will never be a time that you don't have to design for the kids in front of you, ever. You know, and if there's a better way to do that than universal design, then I would be the first one to do it. But like right now, thinking about, I really value creating a system that all kids are in general education together, okay? The curriculum that you have, as it is designed, will not work without a really careful eye towards supplementing that with a little bit of something else. And so what that journey looks like for you is very similar to what it looks like for students. That when you start doing this, and I know that some of you are already incorporating these options, but what I want to think about is this is not about us, it's about kids. Okay? Because when we are first emerging in UDL, we are providing a lot of options and choices for kids. And maybe you start in only one area and maybe you do it in a lot of areas. So it might be like instead of studying France, you say, choose a country to study. You know, choose a state to study, choose a president to study. We do those things already, right? Even in doing that, you're gonna see that some kids really struggle to choose something. Because they're not learners yet in that way. So you're like, you can choose any of these presidents, and then you get kids stuck on the escalator. They're like, I don't know which one. You're like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, these 5 were in wars. That might be kind of interesting. This was the oldest one. This was the youngest one. But I don't know what to tell you. You have to pick something. And so you might start there, right? You might start with saying, okay, so today after I do a little lesson, you're gonna learn a little bit more about the phases of the moon. You can either look through my books, you can watch a brain pop video on an iPad, or you can come over here with me. Okay, it's a choice of how to learn. And maybe it's gonna be to express what you know. Okay, so we just did our projects on our seeds, we planted our seeds, we have these little plants. I want you to talk about all the different processes of the growth cycle. And you can make a poster, or you can write it down. 1, 2, 3, or you can draw it, okay? That's where you're gonna start. That is emerging design, and that's awesome. But what means that you're more proficient at UDL has actually nothing to do with you at all. It has everything to do with the kids. So more proficient UDL is once you're in emerging land for a while, kids start to recognize that there are certain resources that actually help them meet goals. And then what you're gonna do is you're still gonna kind of be in emerging land where you're saying, okay, again, you can choose any planet that you wanna learn about. And to learn about that planet, you can get a book from the library, or you can go on the science website, and then you're gonna make a project, or you're gonna write a paper about your planet. Great. You know you're starting to get more proficient when you have kids say things like, remember that time that we used that graphic organizer, could I use that? Or instead of doing those planets, could we do like some dwarf planets? Okay, that is like a surefire, that's motivation. If they're asking for something, like you have them hook, line, and sinker. Because they want to accomplish the goal. And they're feeling like there's a better way to accomplish that. So that's like a time where you're like, oh my gosh, you're becoming learners. Because you're starting to recognize there's more than one pathway to meet a goal, and that is so beautiful, because you are likely the next time to be stuck to think, maybe there's another way to do this. The ultimate goal of UDL, of course, is to make students empowered. Okay, we want them to say, okay, fine, I get it. We have to understand the growth cycle. But the growth cycle of what? A zucchini? A flower? The type of wood that they use to make a guitar? You know, giant redwood tree? Marijuana is legal, isn't it? They can see how that grows. I mean, but like seriously, like you end up with kids being like little fresh, and I'd be like, sure, check out the growth cycle. Okay? Especially in 7th grade. I used to get kids to throw things out like that to me, to like try to get me to like be like, you don't have to do it, and I would never fall for it. So like, you know, if you have 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, they're probably starting to throw that at you, that it's like, I had a kid once, I was telling the last group, that I'm like, okay, you're all gonna write about something that you care about. And he's like, I don't care about anything. This assignment is so pointless. I'm like, could you argue why it's pointless? He's like, that's so stupid. I'm like, you just said you don't have an opinion, and then followed it up with a beautiful thesis, which is that my assignment is pointless. And you can't say that if you can't give me the reasons why it's pointless. He's like, well, it's pointless because number 1 of it, and I'm like, okay, that's a great first paragraph, keep going. He's like, and it's stupid because this. I'm like, yeah, I love it, I love it. So he's drafting how the assignment is stupid. And like, he's feverish about it. And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, I love this description of me, but I feel like I need more imagery. Like, and then, like again, it's that whole like, okay, you want to play that game, fine. Hey, guess what? You just actually wrote an amazing argument. Beautifully done. And it was really, I still honestly remember it, because it was about how I should never have gone into teaching, I should have gone into the circus. And that's why I was like, but what did I do in the circus? Like, it's a very different feel. Like, was I like an acrobat, or did I like train lions? And like the kid at the end was just laughing and like, you know, it was fine. But anyway, I want kids to, when I start giving a lesson, I don't want them to do it obnoxiously. I don't want them to like say, this is, but literally over time, I want them to say, hey, is there a way? And so we have to give that space for goal setting. We have to say, here's your options, take a couple of minutes, I'm gonna walk around, write down your plan, or circle the thing that you wanna do, and then I'll walk around with you, and then a kid can be like, hey, I know that, you know, it didn't say we could work with a partner, but I really like working with a partner. And I'm like, well, I'm not on this one, buddy, because the standard says that you work alone, but like, I love that you love working together. Let's do group work tomorrow. Okay, I hear you. So that's the progression. So there's a lot of tools to help you understand a little bit more about UDL, but all of them come down to this. When kids are making choices, okay, UDL allows you to put this time in, and this is cyclical. So you start off by saying, here is the goal. The goal is that all of you will know how to count by sixes using base 10. Okay? Like you're just gonna give a goal, right? This is a very, very clear goal. And so, these, I'm gonna teach you a lesson for like 10 minutes, and then you have a couple of options to learn more about it. Okay, you can either watch this Dwayne Habecker video, where he goes over how to count, using base 10. You can use manipulatives and go over here. You can go on Zern and play a couple games. You can come over with me, for example, right? And then I'm gonna say, at the end of this 15 minutes, I'm gonna give you a little quiz to make sure that you know how to do it. So I want you to choose something that will allow you to actually do well on that little quiz. I'm not gonna count it for a grade in class, but if you don't get it right, I'm gonna pull you with me for a small group. Because you just don't get it, that's okay. But I have to make sure you get it. So that's the differentiated instruction piece, okay? But if you make that really, really clear, okay, I'm then gonna let them do whatever they think they're gonna do, even though in my head I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. That kid is going to play the Zern games, and I'm not sure that he understands the content, but I'm gonna let it ride, okay? And the review piece comes from really frequent informal assessments, because I need an accountability thing to say, the thing you chose didn't allow you to meet the goal. And that is like the magic of UDL. And that's the piece that sometimes people are missing, and it feels like, oh my gosh, they're like making all these choices and they're not learning anything. We're accountable to make sure that they're learning something. And I'm gonna give them that option, and I'm gonna design for that option, but I am telling you, you do that a couple of times, and the decision making gets better. Because it's like, oh, I have to go over there with her, and it's like, well, you should come over here with me if you literally don't understand it. I have to make sure you understand it. If the video doesn't do it well, then just come over here with me the first time when I gave you the option. And then you can go play Zern all you want because you understand it. But otherwise, everyone else is moving on to these enrichment things and you're over here with me, getting your cavities filled, right? So that review piece is so critical. Is I will let them do it, but I will not let them get away with bad decisions without some remediation. Okay, so I want you to just take time to reflect on that process, and you can look at any of these tools. There's so many different tools that you can look at, and some of them might not work for you, and that's okay. Again, under number 3, you can learn more about UDL, you can learn more about the tools, okay? Or you can start looking here at some examples of lessons and videos and things like that. But I will put on this video, and I will buzz around and stop me if you need me. Is self-differentiation. And so I just want to tell you a story about you say TK, we say pre-K. So PK in Massachusetts, the teacher was thinking about okay, how can I allow kids to be a little bit more expert in their learning when they are 2 years and 9 months old, okay? And so one of the things that any TK pre-K teacher does is there's some kind of free time for students to choose station and play, so you can assess social skills and you can connect with kids and things like that. And the way that the teacher set it up was that there were 4 stations. There's the station on the carpet where there's the dinosaurs and the Legos and things. There's the writing table where you can write in shaving cream and do clay and things. There's the iPad station where you can do some technology, and then there's what I guess is a sand table, but sometimes it's an Orbeez table, or it was just recently pumpkin gut table, and so they have these 4 stations. And it was essentially these are the groups, you move through the stations, which is very teacher directed. And so one of my teachers, my pre-K teacher, she had this amazing idea, and so she color coded the stations with all she did was take a piece of poster board and have 4 colors, right? So let's say it's purple, red, blue, whatever. So the carpet where we put the different toys down every day is purple. So there's a purple quadrant on the poster. And on it, there's 8 purple clothespins. And then there's a big picture of the carpet. And then, the writing table is blue. So then there's a blue quadrant, you get the picture. And so every day, the kids line up in a different order, okay? And so it's working on their numbers. So if I'm number 1 today, I'm number 24 tomorrow, okay? And they go up, when they line up, when they come in, and they take the clothespin of the thing they want to do, and they put it on their shirt. And then there's a timer set for like 20 minutes of free play time, and you can stay at your station as long as you want. So if you really want to do the iPad for 20 minutes, then you can do it for 20 minutes, because that was the day that you got the clip. And if you are done, like Aylin would bust through every station 8 times, she just has to go up and put it back, and then someone else can take a look at it, and they can do it. And I walked in and observed it, last week after they've been doing it for 3 weeks. It was amazing. Like, kids who are 2 years, 9 months are self-directing their play. And like, I want to go, I'm like, what are you doing? I really want to go to the table, but there's no clothespins. So I'm waiting by the poster for the clothespins. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Like, maybe you could go and play and wait, but then I might not get the clothespins. I'm like, okay, it was a very patient strategy, right? But like, that's self-directed learning in pre-K. Okay? So again, the goal is for students to create their own goals. And I don't mean students are creating their own standards. The standard is the standard. Okay? All of you are going to interact with your peers in this station. But my goal today is I really want to spend a lot of time in the pumpkin station, because you get to pull the guts out and it's like super fun, and like, you can like stab the pumpkin with these like cute little Play-Doh tools, like the Play-Doh forks and things, and like that is my goal for today, so I get to choose that goal. And every kid during the week would get it because of the numbers, but it's just like that balance of like, sometimes we choose this. So what we're really doing when we're doing that well is we're creating an inclusive classroom. This morning in the keynote I talked about, we always say we want to be more exclusive, but the opposite is when we're not inclusive, we're actually exclusionary. And I think we have to talk more about who we're actually excluding, not through our intention. But the impact is that some kids are excluded from that learning experience. Okay? And when we design well with Common Core standards, that is a learning experience you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss getting to choose your book, and to working with partners, and to have like guest speakers come in, and to, like, that's, again, you need your Oren Gillinghams, you need your Lyndon Lubells, you need your time with a physical therapist in a speech and language pathologist, absolutely. But you don't need that instead of what is rightfully yours. And that's just what's so problematic about the system. And that's why I always start system thinking, because the system have to shift if we're going to ultimately do this for every kid. Because you could learn about UDL, and you might have some kids who will never have access to your room. Okay, and the intent is to make sure that every kid has access to your room. So if you look at the UDL principles that I showed you, in the definition of inclusive practice in all of the state legislation through ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, they say that in an inclusive classroom, teachers providing options for student engagement, persistence, and self-regulation. That is straight from UDL. Okay? They're also conducting super frequent checks for student understanding. I'm not going to let kids go do what they want for 2 days and not measure it. Hey, this is the goal. Show me you've met the goal. You are meeting the goal? Great. Go make another choice. You're not? Not yet, baby. Okay? We have to be really clear about those academic objectives, right? You can go on and on and on, but you're seeing that we're asked to present content through multiple means. We're asked to measure their responses through multiple means of expression. And then the last bullet is where DI and UDL are married. Okay, because all the top ones are UDL, but then it still reminds us you must use data and student responses to differentiate instruction. The kids who are not making progress need more from you than kids who are. And you've got to pull them. Okay? And that's the part that sometimes people lose in UDL. Is it's like these kids are not making any progress. But then sometimes it seems to be like in conflict. Like I can't just pull a group and say they're all struggling. But they're all struggling right now. I'm not saying they're struggling learners. Right now, with photosynthesis, these 6 kids are struggling. And I need to make sure that they're struggling less or not struggling. Now, when we do that, if you look at like maybe the 5th one down, it says when we do it well, students are demonstrating autonomy and self-advocacy, and they're actually persevering. My gosh, it's amazing. Like it almost looks like I developed this and I didn't. Right? Like this is how aligned UDL is to like federal research, federal requirements. And then the top one on the classroom is if you're doing this really well, the classroom is supporting a variety of tasks and a variety of formats. And if that is true, there is no reason to separate kids. Because I can support everything that a kid needs in my classroom. Especially if it's co-taught. Okay, so I don't need another class because you need more support, or I don't need another class because you need more rigor. I can provide that here. And again, that's a journey, but once you get to a place where you're saying, my class does support a lot of different things at the same time, then you end up with a lot of kids coming back into classrooms. And so I just want to show you a couple of super cute examples from like our Chinese learners. So in our district, we use Eureka Math. What do you use? Envisions, okay? There's only like 5. Everyone uses investigations, envisions, and focus, right? But we use Eureka. And Eureka, again, be very grateful for having curriculum. I mean, there's a lot of teachers who literally have nothing. Like, you're online every night being like, what do I do tomorrow? Like, what are these standards? So I was always grateful for having curriculum, even though sometimes I hated it. And I was really lucky to be able to have the autonomy to make sure that I provided options and choices to make it accessible and engaging. But like having it is huge. And so we have Eureka, but it's not ideal. And so the way that Eureka starts is they have an activator, a sprint, I don't know what you call it. It's followed by a 35-minute teacher-led conceptual understanding. Like starting in kindergarten, 35 minutes. And then it goes to working on Eureka problem sets, which are AKA worksheets. So it's a really nicely developed program, actually. The math is very well aligned. You know, it's pretty interesting, but kids can't sit there for that long. So what we said was, okay, so first of all, what we need to do for every lesson, and this is a lesson I designed to go into a 3rd grade class and do. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna add an activator for like 30 seconds that is not in Eureka. And once I do that activator, then I'm not gonna make them do 2 fluency activities, because that is kind of a waste of time. One of them was a make 10 activity. In the make 10 activity, all you do is get like dice or cards, and it's like I throw a 4, you say 6. You make 10. And, or you could do multiplying using the distributed property, right? So they're both like kind of game-ish. So it was like they come in, I do the activator, and then you choose your fluency activity. Then what we do is we take the concept development lesson, and we say like 35 minutes is just too long for a lot of kids. So take the meat of that and create a mini lesson for 15 minutes. Like a model of the lesson, show them some things, talk about like what the goal is, and then give them an opportunity for 3 different ways to continue conceptual understanding. They can do it again with the teacher, Jen. They can do it by going on Zern, which is aligned to Eureka, or they can do it by doing Dwayne Habecker, who again aligns his presentations for Eureka. Okay, when he's done with that, okay, then we are going to give them what I know and love, which is this little X-ray. So in the activator, I told the kids that I went to a penny candy store, and I thought that the candy was only a penny, and then it was 6 cents, and I freaked out and I left. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, it was serious. I said, I had like pennies, and I was like, I have 10 pennies, I can obviously get 10 pieces of candy. And then they said no, and they're like, why wouldn't you just buy at least 1 piece of candy? I'm like, I was overwhelmed, there was a lot of people, so I just don't have a good reason. So I gave them a ton of pennies, and I'm like, how would you have done it? Okay, and they, you know, they line them up, they put them in stacks, so they're thinking about like groups of 6. Great. So then we say, okay, and then the teacher's like, you know what, Mrs. Novak, I think you could have done it better if you thought about like 10s. And I'm like, I'm not talking about 10s, Mrs. Marino, I'm talking about 6s. She's like, wait a second here. Like, let me show you like how I would do it. Okay, and she kind of goes through this base 10 activity. So we do that. So then she actually goes through the 15 minutes of the Eureka lesson. Okay, again, that we are so grateful to have. It's very well scaffolded. There's some nice visuals. She does a couple of problems. And then we say to kids, we're going to come around now, and we're going to talk to every single one of you while you enjoy your appetizers. So the appetizers was, watch a video, and it's the most annoying video of all time. It's like 6, 12, 18, 20, like one of those get in your head ear kind of things. And then like she had this adorable puzzle where it was like color by number, but like it was red if it was a factor of 6. It was blue if it was a factor of 5, right? Because they had already done 1 through 6. There was this fill-in where there was just a ton of numbers and you had to put the blanks in. So we said just work on those. It's going to take us 5 minutes to get around to everybody, right? So we go around while you're enjoying your appetizers. One of us will ask you to explain your strategy for skip counting. And you can use words, you can use a drawing, you can use manipulatives. But you have to explain how you jump to 6s using base 10. So like in her class, she would normally have to get through, 30. I was there, so it was 15. So it's like, okay, so tell me what you do. You will know in 10 seconds whether they know the strategy. Okay, awesome job. Not quite there yet. I'm gonna pull a group in a minute, you're coming with me, right? And so then, once you have shown me that you actually know the strategy that I've taught, now you're just gonna go off and do the Eureka handout. Go eat your vegetables, baby. You know it. Like this is gonna be no problem now. You know it. You played on Zern, you had the instruction, and then I'm gonna take everyone who couldn't do the strategy with me. Because they're not ready to do the problem set yet. They need more instruction. And then I'll have the problem set and we'll go over it together, right? And so that's kind of what the Eureka lesson looked like. If you're gonna go younger than that, here's a great example of what we do in kindergarten. We were talking about things that are the same and things that are different. And we said to kids, you are gonna be little creators and you have to go find something that is the same or make something that is the same. And then you're gonna share it with the group. So like one kid drew those cute little spiders. The other girl, that was the top right, like really committed to the task. There's like cutting, there's gluing, there's patterns. Bottom right, he needs a cap filled. Those are not the same. Right? But again, like that's the whole point of using student response to differentiate instruction. Okay, that is literally not the same thing. Okay, so we have to talk about that. Here's another really cute example, is we asked them, every number is one number higher than another number. Show us that. You can show us with manipulatives, you can show us with paper, or you can use an iPad. And they all chose different things. So like we're walking around, okay, explain what you're doing. How high can you get? How do you know you're that high? Okay, we are doing some writing. We're gonna do, this was really cool, it was really authentic. The first time we did the how-to, we took them down to the cafeteria to watch our lovely colleagues make pizza. So they could see the process. So then they had a shared understanding of what it actually looked like. Then they came back and they had to explain how to make a pizza. And they could do that by making the pizza in construction paper. They could do it by writing, or they could do it by writing and making the pizza out of construction paper. And what's so great about this is like the top left and the top middle are in the same class. And just the variability of like one is like complete sentences, phonetically correct with punctuation at the beginning of kindergarten. And like this is much more typical for the beginning of kindergarten on the left. Okay, which is pepperoni, which I love how he pronounce it. He says sauce, S-O-S, sauce. Okay? Now, once they did it, once they were able to explain in writing or in making the construction pizza, then they got to decide what they want to write about how to do. And they could do it on an iPad, or they could do it by cutting out pictures and putting them sequentially, or they could just draw their own story. Now, what you'll notice here is the top right and the bottom left are both about the bus. Apparently, there was some pushing on the bus that morning. Because I said, why did a number of kids write about how to get off the bus? And she's like, they were all called back on the bus this morning. There was an incident. And I was like, okay. But then you have bike riding, and I've never been able to determine how to run the Godin trotty. Somebody's got to know what it is. I can't. But again, it's amazing. The kid's trying to express himself with letters. It's beautiful. Okay, so even your youngest learners can do that. So the last thing I'm going to do, then we have 15 minutes left. And what I'm going to do during that time is model a lesson. You are in 3rd grade. And you come into my class, and every 3rd grader is here. Okay, so if you are born in the years that make you in 3rd grade, you end up in my room. And so you come in and you see this picture, and I say, okay, so this picture, this is a secret picture, and I want all of you to try to guess what this is. And if you don't know what it is, what does it remind you of? Okay, so I want you to check in with somebody next to you really quick. I'm literally going to give you 5 seconds. Okay, what does this remind you of? Go! Ball. Okay. And coming back together.
Stay class.
We're back together, baby. We're back together. I think they're very beautiful. Now, the last group, they were like, those balls that get big and then small and then big? Yeah. You might say Christmas ornaments, okay? What this is, my friends, is the virus that makes warts. Okay? Now stay with me. I know, you're in 3rd grade and like people are falling apart right now, right? Because the 3rd graders, anything having to do with poop or warts. I once did a writing intervention lesson in 3rd grade about how you can make electricity from cow manure. We almost never recovered. It was just too much for them to like keep using evidence. They're like, the poop made the lights go on. Like, that is accurate. So here's the thing. Is we are supposed to, in health classes, from the time they are pre-K, talk to them about don't spread your yucky stuff. Okay? And in 3rd grade, you need to know that there's different viruses. We had a EEE outbreak in New England. A number of people died by mosquito bites. And so we have to talk about these things. And this is the thing. I want all of you as 3rd graders, you don't have to do it, but I would say, okay, there's a thing that's called contact lenses and you put in your eyes. I want you to put on microscopic contact lenses and you're gonna put them in your eyes. This Christmas ornament is everywhere. True. Okay, HPV is everywhere. It's like currently one of the most pervasive viruses there are. We vaccinate kids against them. So what I'm telling you that I wouldn't tell, so these are common warts, planters warts, genital warts. Okay, and with 3rd graders, I'm obviously not talking about genital warts, but I would say, a lot of us are gonna get like little warts on our hands or on our feet, and we think of it sometimes as like Halloween witches, but the reality is 80% of people will get a common wart. Like, it's very, very common. And the reason it's so common is because it's everywhere. Okay, like if you were to swipe these tables or the door handles, like there is definitely gonna be a lot of bacteria and germs and viruses. We'll shake hands out, all of us. So what I would tell kids is that I would say, you're gonna say as a kid, this is so lame. This is so lame, Mrs. Novak. I'm not gonna get warts. That's what my own kids would say to me. And I would say, you're probably wrong. The fact is that 80% of us are gonna get warts. It's like nothing to be ashamed of. You just get them. Why do you get them? Is because too many of us have entry sites on our hands. Now, entry site is like a term that you would use in medicine that we don't think of a lot of time. An entry site is a place where a virus or germs can get into your body. So the reason that we get colds and get snotty noses and get the flus is because it goes in through our nose and our mouth. Those are entry sites. Okay? Now, there's also entry sites on our hands and on our feet and sometimes on our elbows. Okay? And those entry sites are an area of recent injury. It's when the skin is no longer intact. So if the skin is not intact, I want you to think of that as a welcome mat for warts. Okay? So those cute little things going around, right? And the amazing thing about HPV is the incubation period is 8 months. Like if you get the common cold, you're sick in 2 days. The stomach virus, I feel like it's faster. HPV will fester in your body for 8 months. So I'm going to teach you 2 new vocabulary words. The words are the words are microabrasion and maceration. Okay? An entry site on your hand is either going to be a microabrasion or a maceration. Now, a microabrasion is a break in the skin, but it does not bleed. Blisters, hangnails, scrapes, calluses. Okay? Yeah, danger zone is right. Around your fingertips, like I got a blood blister the other day from a hammer. Like it's like literally, it is a wart motel right now. And so a microabrasion, and so like suddenly everyone's like, first of all, I see a lot of you not touching the table anymore. Okay? A lot of people are starting to look at their hands. Now here's the thing. If you don't have any abrasions on your hand at all, if there's no places that the skin is open, you will never get a wart. Okay, the skin's amazing, and you'll learn about that in science. That's how I get people hooked, right? But the reality is a lot of us have a lot of entry sites. Some of us might even have 5. Okay, so the cool thing about a microabrasion is it's very small. All of us probably have a little bit of hangnail going on, maybe some blisters if we work out. But here's the thing: if you have a maceration, you have a story. A maceration bled. There's a story there. Skateboarding accident. Last week I burned my hand because I was taking nachos out of the oven and I had to make a choice. Do I save my hand or do I save the nachos? And I went to save the nachos and seared the side of my hand, and they were such good nachos. So I would say to kids, Look at your hands. Look at hands get beat up a lot. You're using them for everything. So if you have a really good scar, it's probably because of a maceration. That means you have a good story, right? So let's look at our hands. So decide who has the best maceration story at your tables. Go.
I got it.
Okay. So what I've done is that whole section.
What happened?
I am trying to activate your effective network. Okay? I told you the goal. I made the goal very clear. You all have to know how to prevent the spread of germs and bacteria. I'm using HPV, right? But I told you the goal, and now I've gotten you to believe that this is actually important for you to know. Okay? Because I'm yeah, we're all getting them. I'm sure of it. Right? So here's the thing. You now know where your entry sites are. What you have to do is you have to cover the entry sites. Okay? So you can take a Band-Aid and cover the entry site. Okay? But if you don't cover the entry site, that's okay too. You just have to wash your hands enough with soap or sanitizer to make sure that if HPV gets in, that you wash it out before it closes. Okay? So here's the thing that's tricky, is it's not something can close in 20 minutes, but there's a final closure period that's 20 minutes long. You know what I mean? So it's open, and then there's this last oh my gosh, the door is closing, right? So it could literally happen every couple of hours. Okay, now how many third graders do you know that wash their hands well every couple of hours? 0. Okay, 0. Now, after this lesson, you're gonna have to buy a lot of hand sanitizers for 3 days, and then they're gonna forget about it, okay? But for 3 days, it's all they can think about. So, I'm not gonna let third graders freak out. What I would tell them is, the reality is you're probably gonna get them. I've gotten them. I usually get them on my feet, because you walk around on the beach in the summer, shells give you a ton of microabrasions, and then we go in those gross bathrooms. And then the problem is I'm gonna be so gross right now and tell you a secret. I never use soap on the bottom of my feet. When you're in the shower, it just kind of the bottom gets soapy. That should do it, right? Does anyone actually pick up the foot and scrub it on the bottom? Oh my gosh, now I'm so gross. You scrub the bottom of your feet? Never. That explains why I get better more clothes. Never in my life. Oh, come on. There has to be other people with me here. Thank you. There's a couple of non-scrubbers. There's scrubbers and there's non-scrubbers, right? I've told you too much. Okay. So this is real science. Real live science. Doctors having people with warts come in to get them treated. Some get that nitrogen freeze. When you go to the doctor and they put dry ice on it, it burns it off. You can also buy it in the store at CVS. The other half wrap the wart in duct tape. This is legit science. Okay? They come back 2 months later. Okay, when they come back, 40% of the people who got liquid nitrogen have their wart come back, to only 15% who covered it in duct tape. So if you get a wart, do not make your parents take you to the doctor. Go get some free duct tape. And it's essentially week on, one night off, because it's going to be all gross and for me, week on, one night off. But I would tell them that. Now, this is when I would say, now it is time for self-directed learning. Okay, I have given you a mini lesson. That mini lesson had visuals, we were looking at our hands, we were talking, but the reality is this. I need you to understand the science behind that. Okay, so I gave you some ideas, and that gives you the ability to now dive in deeper. So you have 3 choices. Now the first couple of times I did this, I would not add myself as a group. Once they get better at making choices, one of the choices would always be to work with me in a small group right away. But the first couple of times you do this, you might have to help kids get online, so I would just be available the first couple times. And I would say, I'm setting a timer for 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, you're gonna do one of 3 things. You can either go to the CDC brochure, that's the Center for Disease Control, and they have kid versions of all of their brochures, so you can actually go through that. You can go into like the science textbook that talks about that, and there's some nice visuals there that you can look at. Or you can watch a video where like a doctor is explaining how it happens, okay? But at the end of that 15 minutes, I'm then gonna give you 10 minutes to help each other. So you can like quiz each other, you can share what you learned, you can come over here with me in a small group. At the end of that 25 minutes, I will give you a quiz. Okay, anyone who gets all of them right, I'll give you a Jolly Rancher and bragging rights. Okay, and if you don't get it right, I'm gonna pull you into a small group with me. And it's okay, like it's not a punishment, it's just you don't know it yet, it's okay. Okay, it would be so rare that kids wouldn't get questions right on this, because I've like gotten them, you know, it's engaging, it's like, oh my gosh. So if you ask them a question like, you know, like if you have an interest, like what do? They'll know, even with very little language or comprehension, like you wash that crap or cover it up, right? But now they're having access to things that are a little more rigorous, okay? And if you're younger, like let's say you teach first grade, maybe you say 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes to share what you learned, or 1 minute to share what you learned. Okay, but I always wanted time for them to come over here with me, so it would be like silent 15 minutes learning. Okay, again, you know, if they're third grade, can do 15 minutes. If they're younger, it might be a little less. And then again, you can have them, but I always liked them to check in with each other because then they got really clever. So groups would be like, you do the video, you do the textbook, you do the brochure, then we'll all get together. They become pretty strategic. Okay, so I would give it to them, and then I would say anyone who did a great job, that's awesome. You can now go on to expressing what you learned, because you have it. So you can either write a poem or a song to the wart. Okay, I am totally gonna write a letter to the wart once I'm done with my small group. I'm gonna do it in like cursive, like I'm gonna fold it into a fortune teller. It's gonna be awesome. But I am gonna tell my wart, like I am so sorry. Okay, but now I'm taking you down. You can do a podcast if you want to go on your device. You know, by third grade, you know, Brecken can, you know, he can beat me in nitro type, like he's a little whiz. I have a super challenging one. I don't know if any of you want to pick it, but it's super challenging. I want you to write to your doctor and you're going to use super fancy pants, like serious words. Like the word, like epidermis. Is that the word for skin? Yeah, we're gonna say that. And I'm gonna give you like 5 super hard words, and I think it would be so funny if someone could like tell off the doctor nicely. Like we can't be mean, we can't say like that was me, right? But like I triple dog dare you guys to work on that. Okay, so then, okay, everybody, what's your goal? Everyone pick something, even the kids I'm gonna choose to be with me. Once they all have a plan, I say, all right, you're gonna go over here with me for a second. Okay, great. Okay guys, I'm gonna put on a timer and go work on that for 20 minutes. You guys, over here, park it. And they're like, I want to go work on that. I'm like, well, then you should have paid attention when I gave you 15 minutes to study it, right? And again, the more you do that, literally, there were days where there was no one to pull. Because they were all getting it. Like, that's kind of the joy. That's the, you know, and if there's only 1 or 2, I can sit down next to them. Once I'm done with the intervention piece, then I go and start, and they all go work on theirs, right? Now, ultimately, the reason I'm doing this is because I want them to be able to transfer that. So if you look at the UDL flowchart, it basically says that like one of the most important things is that once I know that they literally all know how to make choices about their learning and express what they know, I'm gonna now give them an actual summative assessment where I say to them, here is a page from the CDC. I'm gonna ask you a question. How do you prevent and treat the spread of warts? Answer the question. You can use a graphic organizer, as you know. You can use Dragon Actually Speaking or Google Rewrite. Answer the question, okay? And now I can see if they've learned it, right? So that's like the full cycle of a UDL lesson. So thank you so much for spending the day with me. Have a